I can't believe I just did that, Emily muttered under her breath, staring at her phone with wide eyes as she realized she had accidentally sent a text meant for her friend straight to her ex, Ryan Mitchell. She had been juggling grocery shopping, a screaming toddler strapped into the car seat, and a mountain of bills when her fingers fumbled across the screen. The words, "I don't even have enough for formula this week," had been typed out quickly, venting her frustration, and before she could second-guess herself, she hit send. Her heart pounded as she imagined Ryan reading it. The man she hadn't spoken to in over a year, the billionaire she once loved, the one who had left with his ambition and his cold charm. Emily took a deep breath and tried to focus on the errands around her, but every notification made her stomach twist. Meanwhile, in a sleek penthouse overlooking downtown Chicago, Ryan's phone buzzed on a glass coffee table beside a steaming cup of black coffee. He picked it up casually, expecting spam or a work-related message, but froze when he saw the familiar name, Emily Parker, flashing across the screen. He opened the text and read it slowly, a smirk curling at the corners of his mouth, remembering their time together and the carefree laughter they used to share. There was a pause, a moment where he considered ignoring it, thinking maybe it wasn't meant for him, but curiosity got the better of him. He couldn't help but feel a tug in his chest, a strange mix of nostalgia and surprise. Emily's words were simple, but they painted a picture of struggle, of a mother stretched thin, and for reasons he couldn't fully explain, he felt a pull to act. Back in her small apartment, Emily paced nervously, checking her messages again and again, mentally kicking herself for her mistake. She thought about how she would explain if he replied, how embarrassed she would be, and how this little misstep might ruin the dignity she tried so hard to maintain. Her toddler reached up to tug at her pant leg, oblivious to the tension, and Emily forced a smile, trying to shake off the worry gnawing at her. At the same time, Ryan leaned back in his leather chair, the city lights, reflecting off the window behind him, and chuckled quietly to himself. He typed out a quick response, not revealing his surprise yet, just enough to let her know he had seen the message. He wasn't sure what possessed him to do it. Maybe it was the old connection. Maybe it was a sense of responsibility he hadn't felt in years, but he knew he wanted to help. The thought of Emily struggling while he had the means to make a difference didn't sit right with him. As he tapped send, with a deliberate calm, Emily's phone buzzed. She froze, heart in her throat, bracing for anything from judgment to sarcasm, and then she saw his reply. A tiny smirk played on her lips as she read the first few words, not understanding yet the full impact of what had just happened, her mind racing with hope, disbelief, and the faint glimmer of something she hadn't felt in a long time, relief. Emily stared at her phone, unable to comprehend the numbers on the screen, her eyes widening as the reality sank in. $1 million. She blinked several times, thinking it was a mistake, maybe a glitch in the banking app, but the transaction was real, and the message from Ryan remained clear: no more cheap formula. Her mind raced as she tried to figure out how to react without seeming greedy or ungrateful. She sat down on the worn couch, her toddler still clinging to her leg, and felt a mix of disbelief, relief, and a strange sense of embarrassment. The thought of telling anyone about this transfer made her cheeks flush with both excitement and nervousness. How could someone she had not spoken to in over a year suddenly impact her life in such a dramatic way? She remembered the times she had worried about paying bills, skipping small pleasures, and stretching every dollar to its limit. And now, a single message had turned her immediate worries into a newfound sense of security. Across the city, Ryan leaned back in his chair, watching the city skyline glow as evening approached. He sipped his coffee and thought about Emily, remembering her resilience and humor from the past, and wondering how life had treated her since they last spoke. The feeling of wanting to help, of being able to make a real difference, had been irresistible. He knew that sending this money was not just a financial gesture. It was a way to reconnect, to express a form of care that had always been difficult for him to show. Back in her apartment, Emily slowly began to breathe normally again, realizing that she needed to make a plan. She thought about the immediate needs, the grocery store, the rent, the stack of bills that had been piling up unnoticed. She felt a renewed sense of hope, and a small smile crept across her face as she imagined the relief this money would bring. She was cautious, though, careful not to let this windfall change her values or her approach to raising her child. Her mind wandered to Ryan again, imagining him watching the skyline and wondering what kind of life he led, and she felt a faint spark of gratitude mixed with curiosity. The apartment, once cluttered with stress and worry, seemed lighter somehow, the evening sun casting warm streaks across the room. Emily glanced down at her toddler, who was now playing with a small toy, oblivious to the adult concerns surrounding them, and she felt a swell of determination to make the best choices possible. She knew that this unexpected gift came with unspoken trust and responsibility, and she resolved to honor it in the most thoughtful way she could. Ryan, meanwhile, checked his phone one last time before turning to the window again, a faint smile lingering as he considered the unexpected connection that had reemerged. He wondered if this single act would change things for Emily in a lasting way, and if it would remind him of the human connection that had once been so important to him. Emily, feeling both empowered and humbled, began organizing her plans, setting priorities, and envisioning the immediate and long-term impact on her little family. The shock of the transfer gradually gave way to clarity, and she felt ready to face the challenges ahead with renewed strength, a renewed sense of possibility, and an appreciation for the surprising ways life could shift in an instant. Emily spent the next few hours carefully going through her apartment, making a mental list of the most urgent needs and the ways she could use the unexpected funds responsibly. She considered the groceries, the bills, the upcoming doctor appointments, and even a few small treats for her toddler that she had postponed for weeks. The idea of being able to breathe a little easier without constantly worrying about money filled her with an unfamiliar sense of calm. She thought about her past struggles, the sleepless nights, and the constant stress of trying to make ends meet, and a wave of gratitude washed over her. She realized that this gesture from Ryan was not just about money. It was a reminder that even small connections from the past could still carry meaning and impact. Meanwhile, Ryan returned to his work in the penthouse, yet his thoughts kept drifting back to Emily and her situation. He remembered her determination, her humor, and the way she had always handled life with grace despite the challenges she faced. A subtle smile appeared on his face as he considered how a single act of kindness could ripple through someone else's life in ways he might never fully see. Back in her apartment, Emily made phone calls to pay the bills that had been piling up, arranged grocery deliveries, and even set aside some funds for unexpected emergencies, feeling a newfound sense of control. Her toddler played quietly beside her, and she took a moment to sit down and just breathe, reflecting on how drastically life could change in a matter of hours. The apartment, once a place of constant worry and scattered chaos, now felt lighter, almost infused with hope and possibility. She thought about the lessons she had learned over the years, the importance of staying resilient, and how small gestures from others could have an outsized impact. As the evening light streamed through the windows, Emily glanced at her phone once more, seeing the messages from Ryan and feeling a mixture of surprise, appreciation, and curiosity about how he was doing. She realized that life was full of unexpected twists, moments that could come without warning and change everything, and that being open to these moments required both courage and humility. Ryan, observing the city from his high-rise window, sipped his coffee again and reflected on the unpredictable ways life brought people together. He considered the connection he still felt, the sense of responsibility, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that he had made a meaningful difference. Emily, energized by the possibilities and the relief she felt, began planning her next steps, not just for immediate needs, but for the longer-term stability of her family, feeling both empowered and inspired. The quiet of the evening settled around her apartment, filled not with tension, but with a cautious optimism, a recognition that life could surprise her in the most extraordinary ways, and that sometimes help could come from the most unexpected places, bringing hope, relief, and the subtle reminder of human connection. The following morning, Emily woke up with a renewed sense of determination, sunlight streaming through the blinds and casting warm patterns across the living room floor. She brewed a pot of coffee and set her toddler down with a small breakfast, carefully planning out her day with a clear head and a sense of purpose she had not felt in months. She opened her laptop to review her finances and mapped out how to allocate the unexpected funds responsibly, thinking about rent, utilities, groceries, and the occasional treat that would bring a smile to her child's face. As she typed out notes and made lists, she reflected on the events of the previous day, the accidental text, and Ryan's surprising response. She felt a mixture of disbelief and gratitude, marveling at how a single act could ripple outward and change her immediate world so dramatically. Across town, Ryan began his day in his sleek penthouse, overlooking the city, his morning routine uninterrupted but his thoughts continually drifting back to Emily. He sipped his coffee while reviewing work emails, yet he found himself distracted by curiosity about how she was handling the surprise and how she might react in the coming days. His mind wandered to their shared history, to her resilience, her sense of humor, and the unmistakable spark that had drawn him to her years ago. Back in her apartment, Emily made calls to arrange delivery for groceries, confirmed her bills were paid, and set aside a small portion for future savings, feeling a sense of relief that stretched beyond finances. She noticed how calm her home felt, how the atmosphere had shifted from stress and worry to one of cautious optimism. Her toddler played quietly, the sound of tiny giggles filling the space, and Emily took a moment to just breathe, appreciating the small joys that often went unnoticed. She pondered the responsibility that came with the unexpected help, realizing that it was not just a financial gift, but a reminder of the unexpected ways people could offer support and kindness. Ryan, watching the sun rise higher over the skyline, thought about the significance of human connections, how even brief or distant relationships could create meaningful moments, and how sometimes life provided opportunities to act in ways that mattered more than any financial calculation. Emily continued organizing her day, feeling empowered to make decisions with clarity and thoughtfulness, balancing immediate needs with the longer-term well-being of her family. The apartment, once a place of constant juggling and tension, now seemed infused with a sense of hope and possibility, a space where she could plan, dream, and nurture. As she glanced at her phone, she smiled at the message from Ryan, feeling gratitude without obligation, relief without guilt, and a renewed belief that even small, unexpected gestures could transform a day, a week, or even a life. She spent the morning completing chores with purpose, the light streaming through the windows amplifying her newfound optimism and the quiet confidence that she could navigate challenges with resourcefulness and grace. Ryan, meanwhile, considered the subtle impact of his actions, feeling satisfaction in knowing he had provided support when it was needed most, and appreciating that life sometimes presented moments that reminded him of the value of attention, thoughtfulness, and connection. By mid-morning, Emily had settled into a steady rhythm, moving through her apartment with purpose and efficiency that contrasted sharply with the chaos of weeks past. She had organized her bills neatly on the counter, labeled envelopes for each payment, and marked the calendar with important due dates to ensure nothing slipped through the cracks. Her toddler explored the living room with a small toy car, occasionally looking up at Emily for attention, and she responded with cheerful encouragement, feeling the lightness of her mood reflected in the child's laughter. Emily paused for a moment at the kitchen window, observing the neighborhood waking up, neighbors walking dogs and jogging along the sidewalks, and she felt a sense of normalcy that had been absent for far too long. The sudden financial relief allowed her to breathe, plan, and even consider small improvements around the apartment, like fresh flowers on the dining table or a few new toys that could enrich her toddler's day without compromising practicality. Across town, Ryan continued his routine in the penthouse, the city below bustling with activity, yet his thoughts repeatedly returned to Emily and her well-being. He reflected on the serendipity of the text she had sent, how a simple message could reopen old connections and create meaningful moments. He thought about the decisions that led him to act quickly, the desire to help, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that his intervention could make a tangible difference in someone else's life. Back in her apartment, Emily drafted a budget plan that accounted for immediate needs and future savings, carefully considering every choice to maximize the benefit for her family. She felt a renewed sense of independence and security, realizing that the unexpected support had not diminished her agency, but had empowered her to take control of her circumstances with clarity and confidence. Her toddler babbled happily nearby, and Emily smiled at the sound, reflecting on the small joys that often went unnoticed in the past, now amplified by the relief and stability she felt. She made a list of errands, planned meals for the week, and even allowed herself a few moments to enjoy coffee in peace, savoring the warm liquid as sunlight streamed through the window. Ryan, meanwhile, observed the skyline from his office, feeling a quiet contentment at the thought of Emily moving forward with renewed strength. He considered the importance of timing, of noticing the needs of others, and how a single, thoughtful action could ripple outward, affecting lives in ways that could not always be measured. Emily, energized by the possibilities, continued her day with a sense of purpose, attending to both practical matters and small pleasures, fully aware that life had presented her with an unexpected gift and that her response would shape the next chapter for her and her child. The apartment, now calm and orderly, seemed infused with hope, and every task she completed, from paying bills to arranging groceries, reinforced her confidence that she could navigate challenges with resilience, planning, and a clear vision for the future. As the day progressed, Emily glanced at her phone, briefly wondering what Ryan was doing, and felt a quiet connection that reminded her that thoughtful gestures, even across time and distance, could have lasting and meaningful impact. As the afternoon sun poured through the windows, Emily found herself rearranging the living room, tidying toys and organizing papers with a sense of calm focus she had not experienced in months. Each task, no matter how small, carried a feeling of accomplishment and control that contrasted sharply with the constant pressure she had lived under before. She made a list of priorities for the week, from grocery shopping to scheduling pediatric appointments, and included a few small projects to improve the apartment, like painting the nursery wall a brighter color and adding a few shelves for toys and books. Her toddler toddled around happily, occasionally climbing onto the couch to show her a favorite toy, and Emily laughed genuinely, appreciating the moment without the usual undertone of stress. She paused to sip her coffee, glancing at her phone to check messages, and a small smile crossed her face when she saw a short note from Ryan asking casually how she was doing. The message did not carry obligation or pressure, just curiosity and connection, and it reminded her that thoughtful gestures could extend beyond their initial impact, creating ongoing support and reassurance. In his penthouse, Ryan walked over to the window, gazing at the city streets below, considering the way small actions could influence lives in ways that were often invisible but deeply meaningful. He reflected on Emily's resilience, her humor, and the challenges she had faced alone, and he felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that he had provided an opportunity to ease her burden, even if only in a small way. Back in her apartment, Emily drafted a schedule for the remainder of the day, balancing chores with moments of rest and planning meals with a sense of purpose and care. She realized that the sudden relief had not only addressed immediate concerns, but had also given her mental space to think about future goals, from saving for her child's education to creating a more comfortable home environment. Each decision she made carried a sense of empowerment, and she appreciated the chance to plan without the constant shadow of financial stress looming over every choice. As she folded laundry, Emily reflected on the unexpected nature of life, how a single message could trigger a chain of events that transformed an ordinary day into one of clarity, hope, and gratitude. Ryan, checking his schedule for the afternoon, thought about how his actions might continue to support Emily indirectly, without interfering or imposing, recognizing that sometimes the most meaningful help was quiet, consistent, and respectful of boundaries. Emily prepared a small snack for her toddler, arranging it neatly on the kitchen counter, and felt a warm sense of pride at being able to provide both comfort and stability. The apartment felt lighter, more organized, and filled with a sense of possibility, a tangible shift from the anxiety that had defined her routine. As she glanced around, Emily recognized the value of small, thoughtful actions, the ways in which generosity, timing, and attention to detail could combine to create a meaningful difference in someone else's life, and she felt grateful for the connection, however brief, that had brought this moment of relief and empowerment into her day. As the afternoon wore on, Emily took a moment to sit by the window with her coffee, watching the neighborhood children play in the yards and the sunlight glinting off the cars passing by. She reflected on how much had changed in the past 24 hours, from the frantic worry over bills and the scarcity of everyday essentials to a newfound sense of relief and empowerment. Her toddler sat nearby, happily stacking blocks, and Emily smiled at the simplicity of the moment, appreciating the calm that had settled over her home. She reviewed her list of priorities for the day, carefully balancing errands, household chores, and a few small personal projects that she had been postponing for weeks. Each task completed reinforced the sense of control she felt, and she began to think ahead, imagining the possibilities for her family and the way she could create a more stable and enjoyable environment for her child. Meanwhile, Ryan, in his high-rise office overlooking the city, allowed himself a rare moment of reflection, considering the unexpected impact of his decision to help. He thought about Emily, her determination, her warmth, and the quiet strength that had always impressed him, and he felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that his actions had provided not only financial relief, but also reassurance and hope. Back in her apartment, Emily organized groceries that had been delivered, arranged items neatly in the pantry, and made a quick note of future needs to ensure she stayed ahead of any potential challenges. She felt a sense of accomplishment and relief with every organized shelf and completed task. The sunlight shifted through the room as the afternoon progressed, casting long, warm shadows across the floor, and Emily took a deep breath, letting the peaceful atmosphere sink in. She glanced at her phone, considering sending a short message to Ryan, expressing simple gratitude without overstepping, but decided instead to focus on the present moment and the tangible improvements she was making in her home. Ryan, taking a brief pause from work, imagined her day unfolding, seeing her manage responsibilities with efficiency and grace, and he felt a quiet connection, recognizing that thoughtful intervention could ripple outward and create meaningful change in someone else's life. Emily, feeling empowered, prepared a light lunch for her toddler, organizing the food neatly and ensuring that the day felt structured and positive. She paused again to survey the apartment, now orderly and infused with a sense of calm that had been absent for months, and she realized that the combination of relief, planning, and determination created a foundation she could build upon. The sense of stability allowed her to think more clearly about longer-term goals, from budgeting carefully to saving for special moments, and she felt a renewed confidence in her ability to navigate life's challenges. Ryan, watching the city as the evening approached, reflected on how small gestures and timely actions could influence lives in profound ways, and he considered that the quiet satisfaction he felt came not from wealth or status, but from recognizing the human connection and the difference a simple act of kindness could make. As evening approached, Emily sat at the small dining table, gently folding laundry while her toddler played with blocks on the floor, the warm glow of the setting sun filling the room with a golden light. She reflected on the day, thinking about how much had shifted in such a short period of time, from stress and worry to a calm sense of control and optimism. Each chore she completed, each item she organized, reinforced the feeling that she was no longer simply reacting to circumstances, but actively shaping the environment around her and the future for her child. She took a deep breath and allowed herself a moment to pause, savoring the simple pleasure of having time to plan, think, and prepare without the constant pressure she had felt before. Across town, Ryan leaned against the window of his penthouse, watching the city streets glow under the fading sunlight, considering the chain of events that had led to this quiet connection with Emily. He thought about the responsibility that came with the unexpected opportunity to help, and he felt satisfaction knowing that his decision had provided relief and support in a tangible way. Back in her apartment, Emily reviewed the groceries she had arranged earlier, making sure that fresh food and essentials were neatly stored, and mentally mapped out meals for the week, appreciating that she could now make these decisions calmly and deliberately. The toddler called her over for a quick hug, and she smiled warmly, feeling the small joys of parenting amplified by the newfound security and stability in their home. Emily considered the ways she could continue to manage her finances wisely, thinking about savings, future needs, and small comforts that would enrich their daily life without causing stress. Meanwhile, Ryan prepared a light snack in his kitchen, reflecting on the ripple effect of kindness and how one simple, thoughtful act could create peace and stability in someone else's life without requiring grand gestures or constant attention. Emily moved to the living room to straighten a few items and rearrange the small play area, feeling satisfaction in creating an orderly and nurturing environment for her child. The apartment, once filled with tension and disorganization, now radiated a sense of calm and hope, and Emily recognized the impact of thoughtful planning and support on her day-to-day life. As she glanced at her phone, she briefly considered writing back to Ryan but chose instead to focus on the present, acknowledging the positive influence of his gesture without feeling pressured. Ryan, finishing his snack, looked out over the city one last time before evening activities, content with the quiet knowledge that his intervention had created a meaningful difference, and reflecting on the importance of awareness, empathy, and the subtle power of human connection. Emily, watching the last rays of sun fade, felt a strong sense of determination to continue building stability and joy for herself and her child, appreciating the unexpected turns of life and the ways small acts of thoughtfulness could transform ordinary moments into lasting positive change. As night settled over the city, Emily sat quietly in the living room, her toddler finally asleep in the crib, the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of traffic creating a peaceful backdrop. She reflected on the events of the past day and a half, thinking about the incredible shift from constant worry to a sense of control and relief. The unexpected support she had received allowed her to breathe more deeply, plan more thoughtfully, and embrace both the responsibilities and joys of parenting with renewed energy. She organized her notes, reviewed her budget for the upcoming week, and made a small list of priorities for the following days, appreciating that she could now make decisions calmly and deliberately rather than reactively. Emily paused to glance at a small stack of bills, feeling a sense of accomplishment that she had addressed them efficiently, turning what once felt overwhelming into manageable tasks. Meanwhile, Ryan, high above the city in his penthouse, reflected on the chain of events that had brought them back into indirect contact. He considered the subtle ways one thoughtful action could create positive ripples, providing support, reassurance, and even inspiration to someone else, and he felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that he had contributed to a meaningful shift in Emily's life. Back in her apartment, Emily moved to the kitchen to prepare a light snack for herself, savoring the quiet moment alone and appreciating the simple comfort of a warm drink. She looked around the apartment, noting the improvements in organization and order, and felt pride in creating an environment where her child could thrive. The day's challenges, once overwhelming, now seemed surmountable, and the calm that had settled over the home allowed her to think clearly about both immediate and long-term needs. Emily reflected on the importance of resilience, careful planning, and the unexpected ways that support from others could enhance her ability to provide a stable and nurturing environment for her family. Ryan, checking his phone briefly, smiled at a small message Emily had sent simply acknowledging his help, feeling the satisfaction of quiet connection and recognizing that his intervention had strengthened her sense of confidence and security without imposing or intruding. Emily finished tidying the living room, folded a few remaining items of laundry, and took a moment to simply sit and breathe, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the circumstances and the people, past and present, that had contributed to this moment of stability and hope. As the night deepened, she allowed herself to reflect on the lessons of patience, careful planning, and openness to unexpected kindness, recognizing that life could shift in an instant, and that thoughtful gestures, no matter how small, could have profound and lasting impact. Ryan, watching the city lights flicker on one by one, considered the quiet satisfaction of knowing that his actions had enabled Emily to move forward with confidence and clarity, appreciating the meaningful influence that attention, empathy, and timely support could bring to someone else's life. Emily, sitting comfortably and feeling the stillness of the apartment around her, understood that these moments of calm, security, and thoughtful preparation were the foundation for a brighter, more confident future for herself and her child, and she allowed herself to feel hopeful and empowered as she planned the days ahead.